You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA. You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA.
Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Fabulous Pelton Cast. I'm your co-host Kevin Pelton,
And I'm Tristan Carcino.
and we are here to, on this very first day of 2025, recap the year that was in Seattle sports 2024. A day that many say, a year I should say, that many say peaked on New Year's Day. All downhill from there.
It is the 1 year anniversary of the good day for 2024.
Of the tip, shouts to Elijah Jackson, who is off to TCU to ply his wares next season. But as we annually do, we will look back on the biggest sports stories in Seattle sports during the calendar year.
You hesitated when you said biggest sports stories.
Well, it's because of the fact that I said biggest sports stories in Seattle sports. It was very much I'd like to allow myself to introduce myself moment. That's what happened there.
Okay,
Not that I don't think that there were any big stories or good moments in Seattle sports, but all of them were coaches leaving or getting fired.
Uh-huh.
So many coaches.
Don't forget, coaches getting hired.
I mean, that's true. When coaches get fired or leave, other coaches do get hired. The teams did not choose to leave those positions open. My buddy Tim Booth of the Seattle Times did a story about this recently, and I think he found that it was like 1988 was the previous time that there had been 1992 was the previous time that he found 3 coaching changes in a calendar year. But that was a little different because the Mariners hired a manager after the 92 season for the 93 season. All of these coaches started within calendar 2024. And then obviously the fact that you've got men's basketball and football at both UW and then Wazoo, the Jake Dickert by that rule doesn't count because their new coach won't take over until 2025. But a lot of comings and goings in Seattle sports.
Yes, you also said Seattle sports, so Wazoo doesn't.
True. I'm just saying.
The Palouse doesn't count here.
I'm just saying.
I know a thing or two about Pelton Cast geography, and that's too far concerned.
I'm aware. I'm just saying that even our Cougar friends experienced a high degree of turnover. Additionally, one of those stories being that Pat Chun left Washington State as athletic director for UW.
Is that one of the honorable mention stories of the year? Or?
Well, I didn't put it in the top 10, so let's say it's
it is now an honorable mention. There you go, Pat Chun. You've been honorably mentioned.
Actually, no, I did have that. That's right, because I have in here the UW athletic director leaves after less than 6 months in the job. Can you name the athletic director who hired Jedd Fisch? There is your ultimate Pelton Cast trivia. I know you can't do it.
Oh my God.
I had to look it up. I'll be honest.
I really thought this person did a good job too, but
yeah, I mean, it's hard to complain. They laid the groundwork. We'll see how Danny Sprinkle hire works out. But
I want to say their name was Scott. Who was it?
It was Troy Dannen.
Troy Dannen, there we go. Yeah,
was hired from Tulane, and then subsequently decamped for Nebraska, and was replaced by Pat Chun. So there we go. There's our first honorable mention.
Nebraska, come on. Did
they
even win the volleyball championship this year?
I don't believe they did.
Wow.
I recall that Penn State was hosting it and was in the final against Louisville, I want to say.
How does all that losing feel, Troy Dannen? There was always that one weekend when people realized that Dylan Raiola looks just like Pat Mahomes, and then they saw him play more and saw that he does not play like Pat Mahomes.
Well, Dylan Raiola is very young. Nebraska, are they on the schedule next year? I think I looked at this at one point. They are not. Yeah, no.
They will be eventually.
Logic demands it. That's the football schedule. Obviously, they will play them in other sports. Other honorable mentions. We had some sad news here in December is the Kraken founding owner David Bonderman died at age 82. Someone who was instrumental in bringing the Kraken in the NHL to Seattle, and also the construction of Climate Pledge Arena. So certainly a large role in Seattle sports played by David Bonderman. Staying on the theme of facilities, the Seattle Storm opened a new practice facility and headquarters in April, a very exciting development for them in the franchise that had something to do with another one of our honorable mentions, which is that they signed All-Stars Nneka Ogwumike and Skylar Diggins-Smith as free
That was
agents.
only an honorable mention.
It was. It got usurped by something else, Storm related.
The Noel Quinn.
The trade request specifically.
Okay.
The all-time leading scorer for the Sounders, Raul Ruidiaz, said farewell to the franchise after 7 years and 86 goals across all competitions. So much as with Nico Ladero the year before, a career where he left in a much smaller role than he played for the bulk of it, but still someone who was a crucial factor in their MLS Cup wins. Staying in soccer, OL Reign, not anymore. Seattle Reign retired. That was a story in 2024 that they changed their name back after they were officially purchased by the Sounders, and then they retired Megan Rapinoe's number 15 jersey, the first to be retired in franchise history. And coming in under the wire in the last chronological honorable mention, they traded for the NWSL's all-time leading scorer, Lynn Williams. On the Kraken front, Jessica Campbell became the first female NHL assistant bench coach, which was a huge milestone for her and the Kraken. And then the last honorable mention I had, we'll come to this again. Huskies beat Michigan in a college football playoff championship rematch.
There we go.
You know why we're coming to this again, don't you?
I do.
Okay. Good. I definitely did not remember all of my bold predictions.
I remembered one.
All right, that brings us to our top 10. It's so long and convoluted. I don't know if you remember how long and convoluted
I
it
remember
is.
precisely how long convoluted, and I'm mad about a piece of it. At you.
At me? Oh,
Yeah.
well, yes, okay. That piece of it is fair. I mean, there's a certain adjective
We'll get there.
that wouldn't be fair. All right, number 10, as we reach our top 10 now. Seattle Sounders reached the Western Conference Final for the first time since 2020 before losing to the eventual MLS Cup champion, LA Galaxy.
We start with the roundup.
A match that you were unable to watch because it was not on television. Number 9. Let's begin the coaching change theme.
Yeah, did you rank the coaching changes?
I mean, they are implicitly ranked, I suppose.
Okay.
Kraken fire inaugural head coach Dave Hackstall after 3 seasons.
I do agree that this is the least important of the coaching changes.
And hire Dan Bilesma.
Dan Bilesma, somebody who we watched through the Coachella Valley run and paid a lot of attention to. Little did we know that he was going to be future head coach of the Seattle Kraken.
I mean, we kind of knew by the end, I think.
No, I think it happened during that
It did
run,
happen during the run, but we had heard, if you'll recall, that he wanted to stay in Coachella Valley, had to be talked into taking the Kraken job.
Bullied into being head coach of the Seattle Kraken.
Do you realize, I mean, this is actually probably not the case because they undoubtedly were on a road trip, but he could have seen the Huskies Acrisure Invitational Championship had he remained. That should be an honorable mention.
Number one.
Yeah, that's top the list.
We have a new number one. Everything's bumped down a spot.
We'll always have the Acrisure Invitational where the Huskies beat 2 teams that are not rated in the top 75 on KenPom, but neither are they. So it was a fair fight.
There we go.
All right, number 8, alluded to this earlier. After an investigation revealed no misconduct by the Storm coaching staff, Storm star Jewell Loyd requested a trade after the season, having played only for the Storm in her WNBA career, her 10-season WNBA career being part of championships in 2018 and 2020. That hasn't been resolved because, WNBA free agency and trades won't get going until next month, but undoubtedly a huge moment and a fork in the road for this Storm franchise.
Yeah, a fascinating one. I mean, we talked a little bit about how the Storm basically, in some ways, rebuilt around Jewell Loyd, right? The rebuild that they were doing, but with the 2 signings that they had, we've honestly litigated this so much. But with the 2 signings that they had,
some are saying maybe too much.
Who are these?
I don't know. No one specifically said that. I'm just saying. Yeah, Skylar Diggins-Smith and Neko Ogwumike.
But with those 2 signings, Noel was, or not Noel, Jewell Loyd was anticipated to be kind of the face of the franchise still alongside them, basically be like number 1, and they would be the 2 role players. Didn't turn out quite the same way. And
I mean, they came here to play with her.
One of, I would say, the worst seasons of her career, right? At least in her prime. And it's something that ended up culminating with this trade request that happened. I think the Storm are in a very fascinating place. Obviously, Neko Ogwumike and Skylar Diggins-Smith are not young players. And I think if there's going to be the next Storm championship team, uh, I'm not sure if this is the core. But I also think even without this trade request, Jewel Lloyd probably wasn't part of that core either way. So this is a bridge team right now. And I think whatever they get back in return for Jewel Lloyd is going to be the thing that's going to set them up, when that trade eventually happens, is going to be the thing that sets them up for the next 5 years, is going to be a big part of that. But this is kind of the first inflection point more than almost anything else.
I mean, the thing that sets them up could be now they didn't keep their draft pick because to make these signings, they traded Kia Nurse and their first round pick to Los Angeles, number 4 overall, and did not draft either Rakia Jackson, who made the all rookie team, or notably Angel Reese, who was drafted after that. But as we've talked about at length, part of what they got in return was LA's unprotected 2026 first round pick. And that could also be the core of the next Great Storm team.
I think that is the most likely scenario.
Lots to watch still on the Storm front.
So this is a big trade request, but I don't think it's a franchise altering trade request. I guess that's what I'm saying.
We'll come back to this a little later.
Wow. Okay.
Number 7, the University of Washington, we alluded to this, begins play in the Big Ten. We still have the spring sports yet to make their debut, most notably softball and baseball, but we have now played an entire football season in the Big Ten, or embarking upon men's and women's basketball, an entire volleyball season. We saw both soccer teams advance to the NCAA tournament. And I would say, Christian Capel of on Montlake, third Pelton brother Christian Capel, had a survey recently asking his readers what they felt their satisfaction with the Big Ten move thus far on a scale of 1 to 10. And I think I probably put a 6 or a 7 because I think I'm still sad about the destruction of the Pac-12. That would have been my preferred scenario, is to just go forward with that. But given where we were after UCLA and USC left, I still think this outcome was pretty good for UW, all things considered.
Yeah, and I'm a little fascinated how you even rank your own personal satisfaction. What does that mean exactly? I guess to me, the biggest takeaway is just kind of how seamless everything felt. It's not like you went through the season, and we did comment about how strange things were, but we weren't sitting there week to week being like, God, I just miss playing Utah, And obviously there was some consistency and continuity with the Pac-12 also. They still played USC, UCLA, and Oregon. The overall schedule didn't look that drastically different from some of those teams.
But they played the Apple Cup in September.
Yeah.
My God, what would we tell the children?
I mean, I will say that the Apple Cup in September was pretty bad, but
it was pretty bad for a variety of reasons. Mostly that the Huskies lost.
Honestly, I wish we could go back and realize that we were watching on the opponent's side the number 1 quarterback not the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 player in the transfer portal in that game. That would have been a very strange thing to tell September us.
I agree, especially after John Mateer. I mean, he had a good game, but he didn't necessarily have a great game. It was Washington State's defense, notably Buda Okta, who won that game.
Really?
I mean, Buda
do you remember a play that he made?
He was the unblocked player on the 4th and 1 Damon Williams or Will Rogers option play.
Wow.
So there you go.
The thing that I always tell people, if you're a hater on something, you know what I tell people? Wait. Time is the biggest hater, because every time you're annoyed about something, just wait. And eventually that player will be on the Huskies.
What if you're annoyed about the NBA not being in Seattle? Time is not moving very fast on that one.
I'm big, but still wait.
I agree. I'm just saying, we've waited a long time on that one.
Anyway, that's my advice. My advice for all haters is wait.
What about the Mariners not spending? How long are we supposed to wait on that one?
I mean, I didn't say how long. The only advice I have is just wait.
Okay.
That's it. I didn't say wait X amount of time.
Did you see that? I mean, this is not unique to Jimmy Carter. It was pointed out by Zach Jabal in the Discord. Every MLB team won the pennant in Jimmy Carter's lifetime, except the Seattle Mariners.
I can't believe he died that way. It's really shocking that they didn't think of Jimmy.
R.I.P. Obviously, an incredible figure. Anything else on UW and Big Ten play, which is what we were discussing?
No, I think overall, the main takeaway, it was funny. We were in Portland this last weekend, and Luca was all mad at the Oregon. Well, this is big sign, right? And he's like, oh, these, and I'm like, we're also in the Big Ten. Like,
Stay cool.
that's it. Literally, all they're talking about is the conference they're in. That's all there is. We're there too. So, I think things on the whole, and I guess the other takeaway, it's funny where you were mentioning Nebraska, and you're like, do we play them next year? It's implied the football team is in the Big Ten, and also all of the other teams are in the Big Ten. And I think that has become even more clear after playing through this season is kind of just the magnitude of what you're doing. It's basically like, this is a football change that happened. And I think in this football transition, there was a difference playing Big Ten football versus Pac-12 football. The style of play. Pac-12 teams did very well on the whole. And obviously one of the Pac-12 teams was able to adjust to the Big Ten pretty nicely, but it was not the Huskies.
Well, more on that coming too.
Really?
Oh, you don't even remember?
Oh, a bold prediction?
Yeah.
Just wait.
I mean, there is technically a chance that bold prediction could be correct, but it's very unlikely.
Anyway, there was a difference in playing Big Ten football versus playing Pac-12 football for the Huskies. You know, the physicality, the size of the lines, the run games that they were playing. Literally every week, it was kind of just like, here's the same team over and over and over again. Here they come again. Here they come again. It's going to be another team that can't pass very well and they can run. And that is kind of historical Big Ten football. Again,
somehow even Louisville conformed to that for the bowl game. Although I don't know, the Sun Bowl has been played by the time between the time we have recorded this and the time honestly, it's been published. So maybe
if we're bold predicting things at the end of this podcast, what a victory for the Huskies. Damon looked great.
Maybe their quarterback did have a monster game and it turned out they could pass. Harrison Bailey.
So that'll be the interesting thing. I think long term, I think those programs are going to start looking a lot more like UW long term and like the West Coast football teams long term. But
I think UW is going to start looking more like them long term.
I think they'll all mold into one, but we'll all be one big happy family conference. But no, I think over time the Big Ten is going to have to start passing the ball one by one. Teams are understanding like how different it looks. But on the whole,
which are these teams that did it this year
that passed the ball well?
Yeah. Because it seems like the opposite. Like Michigan, obviously they were always a run-heavy team under Jim Harbaugh, but they were like capable of passing. I don't know if you heard, they had a quarterback drafted in the top 10 last year.
Ohio State is it well.
Ohio State has been for a long period of time.
He comes up in my bold predictions. No, it's a different Ohio. It has not been as long as you think that Ohio State has been able to pass.
I suppose. The one by one seems to imply more rapidity than I think we're seeing in practice.
There's also a team that won the Big Ten. Even Penn State. Penn State, they run the ball a lot, but Penn State passed the ball like, their star was a tight end, and they have a star quarterback. It is happening, like I said, one by one, teams transitioning. But
all right, well, let's talk about two players who could pass and catch the football, because they were both drafted from the University of Washington in the top 10 of the 2024 NFL draft. Rome Odunze going to the Bears, Michael Penix Jr. going to the Falcons in a truly shocking draft night moment that affected the Seahawks, among others. So we were paying close attention to this one, but what an amazing moment for UW football and sort of a capper to the 2023, I should say, season.
Yeah, and I think it's not even just those two going in the top 10. It was Troy Fautanu, who ended up missing the 2024 season, being drafted in the first round as well. Jalen Polk being drafted very high with a lot of hype preseason that he didn't necessarily meet during the season. Jalen McMillan, however...
I love the necessarily.
Jalen McMillan looking awesome in his rookie season as well. So, UW football is spread throughout the NFL. It's very young. Michael Penix Jr. finally getting the chance to start for the Falcons. It was something that I don't know if we were predicting the season. I think we all had a sense that Penix would probably start a game because that's just kind of how these things go. But the timeline got a little accelerated, and there's definitely a Falcons conversation to be had about what to do with that Kirk deal. But I think, honestly, every quarterback, and this is the first time that you could say this, again, if you're a hater, wait, but almost every quarterback drafted in the first 12 picks of this draft, I think almost every team is happy for the most part. There's almost no team that would like if you could do a redraft, there's different you would shuffle the quarterbacks differently, but I don't think there's any team that is looking at it being like, wow, we really whiffed on that one. And despite the fact that it seemed like at the time Michael Penix was drafted overly high, that Bo Nix was drafted overly high, I think both of those teams are very, very happy at the moment with the quarterbacks that they drafted. And Rome Odunze, him and Caleb Williams still figuring things out. They had the offense coordinator change midseason. I think Rome Odunze is going to have a monster 2025 season.
I mean, if they hire an offensive-minded head coach, Ben Johnson in particular, like they'd be very excited to have Rome Odunze in fantasy next year.
You may want Ben Johnson, but what you get is Pete Carroll.
Oh. This was on the Discord today from at West Coast CFB on Twitter. First and second round NFL draft picks by the Big Ten programs over the past 10 drafts. Where do you think Washington ranked on this list if you haven't seen it?
First and second, I have not seen it. I think they're probably third or fourth.
Second.
Really?
Ohio State's number one with 33.
I was going to say Ohio State's a lock. I figured Michigan would have been up there as well, though.
Only 18. They are fourth. Penn State 19, UW 23, USC 16. Oregon 7th with 11 players drafted in the first and second round.
We know. Also, those players have performed quite well on the whole. Those players are spread throughout the NFL. There was an era some of the Chris Peterson draft picks maybe didn't have the same kind of impact, but or at least offensive players. But these players are
the John Ross Dante Pettis duo in particular. Yeah.
But these players are doing big things right now in the NFL. And Michael Penix Jr., even seeing the quote from Jalen McMillan where there was a duck on the field, and he was like, "That's not a good omen." I was like,
that got a lot of run on SportsCenter. I happened to be watching
Did it really?
last night. They played a bunch of clips, but they had Jalen McMillan, and then afterwards, because they didn't explain, he never said anything about it, and then afterwards, Scott Van Pelt, SVP, highlighted that he was a Husky, and that
explained why ducks are bad. He wasn't just wow, this rookie wide receiver hates ducks.
I mean, watching the video, because I saw the quote, but I hadn't seen the video until I watched SportsCenter. Like, he's not joking. I think he may actually dislike the physical ducks.
Oh, you think I don't feel the same?
I have no negative feelings towards ducks as a species.
You may want to rethink things.
No one asked. They didn't ask to have Oregon name their football teams after.
We should be apologizing to ducks.
Do you think Oregon fans should dislike Huskies?
Alaskan Malamutes? Absolutely not. They're a majestic dog.
I mean, I agree.
They probably do, though. I'm just being honest.
I bet
if you looked at it ratio-wise of
Husky ownership in Oregon and Washington,
I guarantee you it is higher in Washington. There's no way it's not. But also, I bet if you looked at the country and dog ownership in general, I bet it is disproportionately lower in the state of Oregon.
No, I don't believe that.
You don't believe that?
Having been to a pet store in Oregon over this weekend, I do not.
People are just down there walking around with Huskies all the time.
There are a lot of pet stores in the Portland area.
No, I'm saying
Huskies specifically.
Huskies, not dogs.
Oh, okay.
But like, if
I thought that's what you were saying on the second one. Yes, I agree that there's probably fewer Huskies.
Over expectation or lower than expectation. If you could assign, because I'm sure you could do this, right?
No, yes, I'm not going to
do this, but I don't even know how you would fucking find out. But if you were able to look at versus expectation, the amount of Huskies in any given state or area, because that is numbers, like, I just don't know if those numbers are available, but if you were able to have those numbers, I would assume it's lower. Not for ducks, though. Nobody has them as pets. They just shit on everything.
Oh, you feed them. Your children love the ducks.
I set that up so perfectly, and then you defended ducks. Take that out. Take that out. That was just as bad as what I said earlier that you removed.
Oh, no, it decidedly was not as bad. All right, number 5 on the list. Going back to the coaching change front, we're gonna get a lot of that now from here on out. Men's basketball hires Danny Sprinkle to replace Mike Hopkins.
They did do that.
A move that came as a surprise as of last year's year in review. Also, I'll put it that way.
We were expecting Hop back.
Among other things, we had no idea who Danny Sprinkle was at that point, and certainly not that his dad played football at UW. Dude, that was a discovery in March after this was also already basically done.
It'd be kind of strange if we'd really known that much information about.
I mean,
Danny Sprinkle.
there was another coach that we did a lot of research on around this time of the year because I predicted that he was going to be the next head coach, and very fortunate now that he was not. Uh, yeah, so you're that down on the Danny Sprinkle era?
So far, yes. Are you not?
I mean, I think the recruiting has gone very well thus far.
No. I'm down so far on the court stuff. The recruit Danny Sprinkle has time. I'm not actually concerned about Danny Sprinkle right now, but they did have one of the worst losses in program history.
I don't think they had one of the worst losses in program history. There's like there's usually a non-conference loss about as bad as that. It just usually doesn't happen to the team that's from 4 miles away from campus or whatever it is, not to a Pelton cast of geography us with the distance between Montlake and Capitol Hill here. But it's one thing when Montana comes in and beats you. It's another when it's Seattle U and you haven't lost to them in over 4 decades.
Montana's just better though, also.
I don't know if the Montana team that beat the Huskies, and I want to say that was 2021 when I declared it might be the worst loss in program history. I'm pretty confident that team was worse.
Really? Than this Seattle? This is a bad Seattle U team.
Well, first off, Seattle U now looks much better because I don't know if you're aware of this. They beat UW. They're up to 138 in the Ken Palm rankings.
All right, that's not bad.
That I want to say was the 2021 season. Montana ranked 189 that year.
Okay.
They went 15-13 overall, 7-9 in the Big Sky.
All right, fair enough.
So, I don't know.
No,
like you said,
I think things will be good.
Also,
all of these teams.
If we learned anything from the Mike Hopkins era, it's that you don't want to peak too soon as a coach.
That's true. Well, let's talk about coaching changes in general at the end.
Yes, I also want to talk about that. Our next coaching change: the Mariners fire Scott Service and make legend Dan Wilson their manager for the final month plus of the 2023-24 season and beyond.
So, what did you have? This is number 3.
I think this is 4.
4.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one because it is both the most fan service hire of all of the hires that happened.
Without question.
Managers don't matter in baseball necessarily all that much. And I think this is the only of the coaches who were hired. I mean, with the coaches who left or whatever, you can't really judge this. Of the coaches who were fired, I think this was the harshest reality of all of them. Because Scott Service up until this point was maybe the second most legendary manager in Mariners history.
I mean, he's the second winningest.
The second winningest manager.
And I'm not even sure who's third. I'd have to go look it up to see who's third.
It was Mike Hargrove was the manager in the 2000s, right? When they
went 116 games.
It was still Lou then.
Yeah, there was a young man named Lou Piniella.
Okay, so when Lou Piniella and then Hargrove was after that?
Yes. I mean, he wasn't immediately after that. Don Wakamatsu, I want to say, was next, or was it Bob Melvin? I think it was Melvin and then Wakamatsu.
Did Mike Hargrove ever manage the Mariners?
He did. You're not misremembering, but it was a short-lived tenure, I would say, and not a notably successful one.
So yeah, I mean, it's especially if Lou was the manager.
There was a lot of managers between Bob Melvin and Don Wakamatsu, including Mike Hargrove, the John McLaren era, Jim Riegelman.
Okay. So, and Bob Melvin, Lou was the manager 2000 2001.
Yes. Scott Service won 680 games in Seattle. Lou Piniella won 840. Third place on the all-time wins list is Jim Lefevre, who managed the first 500 Mariners team at 233.
So, 2 managers have taken the Mariners to the playoffs ever.
That is correct.
Right. Lou Piniella and Scott Service. Scott Service did basically a complete transform of this entire organization. And again, as much credit as you want to give to a manager, I'm not really sure. But he definitely did take this from being one of the worst organizations in baseball to, if we take a step back, right? When you're in it, it's hard. But if you take a step back, the Mariners have been a consistently very solid franchise for quite a few years now, uh, and are probably punching above their weight as far as the franchise goes as well, right? Because they're not spending necessarily commensurate with those wins. So I think Scott Service, and it really felt like he was fired just to kind of kickstart a team that had just kind of been flailing a little bit, which did happen, right? They got some regression in the mean with Dan Wilson. He did things slightly differently. Sure, there are things that are frustrating with Scott Service, but if Scott Service had carried out the rest of the season and you were going into 2025, I would feel fine with that overall. In fact, I would also maybe argue that the Mariners would be in a better position for 2025 with this roster, with Scott Service as manager, than Dan Wilson.
I mean, I just don't know that we know enough about Dan Wilson. I think the correct prior is baseball managers do not matter one iota.
I agree that that's the correct prior, but you should assume that the coach is the second winningest coach in organization history, is probably a better manager than the person who's managed for a month and a half.
Fair. All right, number 3 on the list. Now we get to the big 3. I mean, with all due respect to Scott Service, and again, the second winningest manager in Mariners history,
there were three as the big 3.
There were 3 seismic moves in Seattle, seismic stories in Seattle sports, and all of them happened in the first 2 weeks of the year. So in number 3, we have Kalen DeBoer leaving UW for Alabama, and then being replaced by Jedd Fisch.
So we're treating these as kind of one story together.
Yes. I mean, the top 2 are pretty big. So,
really, just a fascinating move, and the swinging doors nature of this. I think Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. I'm going to say that. That is what I'll accept, is that Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. I have no idea how long his Alabama tenure will last. If he doesn't make the playoff again next season, it may not last more than 2 years. But I think Kalen DeBoer is a good and capable coach, and I think this UW team might be in a better position. I don't know if this is just, rose-colored glasses or whatever. I think this UW team might be in a better position today than they would have been if Kalen DeBoer was still the head coach.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I mean, maybe in the short term, if you just want to argue that Damon Williams Jr. has been so effective that it's not...
we have to judge one game that they lost badly and one half against USC. We're like, fuck Kalen DeBoer. We got Damon Williams.
That's what you're saying. I'm saying if you want to maybe argue that, I suppose I can buy it.
My argument with this is,
can I tell you a thing about Alabama?
What's that?
They had a better statistical season than they did last year when they made the playoff and lost to Michigan in overtime under the most legendary coach in college football history.
Yeah,
so that's a fun fact about Alabama.
Let me tell you another thing about Alabama.
But I agree with what you're saying, that the expectations are if they don't win the national championship, it's been a disappointing season.
But the previous coach won those games. He went to overtime against Michigan with that roster. But
when you're predicting what's going to happen in 2025, how good the team is in 2024 is an important factor in that.
We will see. We will see.
I think I think Kalen DeBoer, I don't know. I think there's a pretty good chance he wins a national championship at Alabama.
I think he is more likely to be fired than to win a national championship.
Well, all coaches get fired, so
I think that's what I'm saying. I think he is more likely to get fired before he wins a national championship.
I mean, probably, but I think people think the odds of that are like 5-1 in favor of getting fired. I don't know if you could do that as a wager, but I think that people overestimate the odds because people like to treat randomness as skill.
It's hard to win national championships, and it's always getting harder to win national championships.
No, it's
harder
not.
It's harder this year.
There's the same number of national champions as there were before. That's the fun thing about it.
You have to win a lot more games.
That doesn't matter.
All right,
someone's got to win those games.
All right, fine.
The Wyatt Earp theory.
What is the Wyatt Earp theory?
That like people I mean, generally it's the idea that people say, what are the odds of that? But someone had to do it. So, for example, the theory is named after Wyatt Earp because the idea is, well, people thought Wyatt Earp was this amazing uh, marksman or duelist or whatever you want to say, because of the fact that he survived all of these gun battles. But someone, odds are, someone in the Wild Wild West was going to do it, and maybe he had slightly better
It's
odds in
about
each individual one.
consistency, though. It's not about Wyatt Earp won the battles consistently. Somebody could do it, and then you kill each other, and then somebody else wins the next battle.
But the point is that like there's thousands of potential options, so one of them was probably going to end up looking that good, and it just ended up being him.
Wow. I didn't realize we were shitting on Wyatt Earp in this podcast. I just watched Tombstone. Seemed pretty good to me, but
But that's because the story is written after the fact.
it's a documentary.
The most extreme version
Should
of
have
this theory
seen his mustache.
that is out there that some people I think legitimately believe is that there's no such thing as coaching ability, and all that happens is some coaches get lucky and therefore they get better jobs and move up, and some of them continue getting lucky.
That is completely wrong. There's
I don't know that
definitely
it's completely wrong, but I do not hold that particular theory.
it is a combination of luck plus coaching ability.
But I think the luck is underrated and the coaching ability is overrated.
Or we can confidently say Nick Saban was a good coach.
Probably.
Not willing to go that far. Just
Probably a
really
good
lucky
coach.
consistently. That's the piece though that I'm talking about Kalen DeBoer is I'm not sure if Kalen DeBoer at a program like Washington. At Alabama, he's able to build a program. It's a lot easier, if we're being honest with ourselves. It is easier to build a program at Alabama, to have elite level talent at Alabama than it is here. There's a whole infrastructure.
But that's what makes it all the more impressive that he did it at UW. And granted, it was with
I agree.
one specific quarterback.
It was with one specific quarterback, and it was for 2 years. And again, what did I tell you about haters? What should he do?
Wait,
because
I believe awkward silence.
If Kalen DeBoer doesn't take that job, the day that he takes the job, he's not the head coach of Alabama. If Nick Saban stays one more year, some other person is the head coach of Alabama, not Kalen DeBoer, right?
Yeah.
We don't know who it is, but it's somebody else. Probably Lane Kiffin. But it is somebody else. And that was a great job by Kalen DeBoer, timing opportunity-wise. If you were such a great coach, you would be the coach of Alabama no matter what. You would eventually get there. But
again, I think luck is just such a huge factor. So that's why I'm not sure that Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, but I'm less inclined to change my position on Kalen DeBoer's coaching ability from last season to this season than almost anyone else.
I am, and they may be very good. He may be very good at Alabama. Again, I think Kalen DeBoer is a good coach, but I think that Jedd Fisch has done a better job taking a program that is in transition, and they were in transition even when Kalen DeBoer was going to be the head coach. It was going to be a transitional season no matter what. And Jedd Fisch has done a better job with that transition than I feel like Kalen DeBoer would have.
I think this is a little bit of rosy retrospection, and you're not remembering some of the frustration during the season.
Well, do you remember some of the frustration during the season with the quarterback that Kalen DeBoer, and who knows, maybe Will Rogers is awesome under Kalen DeBoer. Maybe he's a completely different player under Kalen DeBoer, and the system is different. Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb.
Or maybe Will Rogers wouldn't have started.
And it would have been Austin Mack. You're taking a W on this bold prediction.
I'm not taking an L, that's for sure.
I'm a little surprised that I guess Austin Mack will have a chance to compete next year, but he's not going to be the starting quarterback for Alabama.
I mean,
anyway,
yes, there were some frustrations during the 2023 season too, but like the penalties on the road, some of the situations, some of the confusion that happened, some of the late game decisions. I think that it's not as fresh right now as it was then. It's like the effect with another coach we'll talk about in a second here, where we loved that coach so much from February through August, and then the game started.
Okay, let's go.
Nobody would rather have.
I am such a Jed dude. Like I have loved almost every. Again, there's like a few moments where it's just,
I think regress your opinion to the man.
I think Jed is doing everything the right way.
Our number 2 sports story of the year. In a shocking move, the Seattle Seahawks fired Pete Carroll, even if they want to say he was a consultant this year. He was a consultant who never visited the team or communicated with them in any way. He spent all his time over on Montlake and hired Mike McDonald, the NFL's youngest coach, as his replacement.
it's so interesting to say that Scott Service was the undeserved because he's the second greatest coach in Mariners history, and this is the greatest coach in Seahawks history, and it's not even close, right? This is the head coach who is responsible for probably our like the top 10 of our greatest football memories ever, right?
I mean, I don't know. The tip might be in the top 10.
Okay, pretty close though, right?
Also,
I mean,
the missed field goal against Oregon by
okay.
Oregon. That's
Okay,
probably
how
in the
about
top
this?
10, right?
Our greatest NFL moments ever, or Seahawks. But like, part of the reason that
Did you see the stat, by the way? So Lions and Vikings is going to be the fourth time in NFL history that two teams who are 10 games above 500 have played. And we were at one of the other three. One of them occurred in like 1928.
Lions and Vikings,
So they're going to be what, 14 and they're both 14 and 2, I believe.
well, we don't know what the Lions record is they're playing currently, but
Oh, no, they have won. They have
oh,
completed the victory as we
they
record
did.
this.
Okay.
Anyways, it was Seahawks Colts on Christmas Eve 2005.
Really? Well, yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
So wait, it's the first time that they've played each other.
The fourth time in NFL history that two teams have played each other, and they've both been at least 10 games over 500 at the
10
time of the
games
game.
over 500.
So the Seahawks, if I recall correctly, were 12 and 2 at that point, and
Does
the
Jim Sorgi.
Colts were 13 and 1.
Yeah, Jim Sorzi's Colts. That was pretty fun.
Manning played the first half, didn't he?
I think he played the first series. Michael Boulware had the pick that won it.
I don't remember that at all. I just remember leaving
You
the
don't remember
stadium
Michael
furious. I mean, I remember Michael Boulware. I don't remember that particular play.
I think he had a pick 6, I want to say.
I think you might be thinking about a Miami game elsewhere. The Seahawks won this 28-13, and the Colts score touchdown came on with 1:59 left after they were down 28-6. So you're thinking of a Miami Dolphins game. This game, the Seahawks pretty comfortably dominated because, as you noted, Jim Sorgi was playing quarterback for most of the game. Sean Alexander scored 2 touchdowns, including one with
to set the record,
3:58
right?
left to give them a 28-6 lead. And I was furious for some reason that they had handed the ball off to him instead of passing in that situation. I don't remember exactly what I was upset about.
The world is a complicated place.
Oh, he scored 3 touchdowns. He caught a touchdown in addition to rushing
No
for 2.
interceptions. Wow, I really thought Michael Boulware had an awesome play in that game.
No, I'm very confident you're talking about a game in the 2004 season against Miami that we bought single game tickets to.
That used to be a thing we could do. Just like buy tickets to a game.
And would
I guess you still can.
63-yard
But
pick 6 to win it. The game was tied with 56 seconds left.
that was awesome.
Yeah. Shots did not expect a Michael Boulware reference on this week's podcast.
So this is this year's podcast. So the other time was Seahawks 49ers on Festivus. Is that right?
No, it had nothing to do with the Seahawks. The Seahawks only played
okay.
in one of those games. But again, it's happened 4 times in the entire history of the NFL, and we were at one of them.
Yeah.
And I guess we could still go if we wanted to fly to Detroit. Buy some single games. Anyways, Pete Carroll.
Yep. It was just time. It was time for Pete Carroll. It made sense. You know, the era happened. Pete Carroll got an extra handful of years. I think the season goes differently if Pete Carroll's the head coach. The record might not be that drastically different, but how you're feeling for the future is pretty drastically different because you go from the oldest coach in the NFL to literally the youngest coach in the NFL. So, you know, it's a pretty huge transition. And if you believe in Mike Macdonald, which again, I think you and I both do believe in Mike Macdonald, at least so far, you know, it's a complete difference in the future of the organization. And it's not something that you don't look at head coaches in the NFL. You're like, well, if Mike Macdonald excels here, then he'll get hired by the Packers or something. It's like, if things go well with Mike Macdonald in Seattle, he could be the head coach for the next 20 years. And I think that's that's what they're hoping for right now. And I think that's what they're hoping this, you know, type of organization is. It's what it was for Pete Carroll. And for the run that Pete Carroll went on, it was the greatest run in Seahawks football history. So,
I mean, I think it's hard to overstate. Like, we were pretty surprised by the Kalen
I have to
DeBoer.
pause for a second. Hold on.
Okay.
A bee just fell from the sky.
Inside your house?
Yes, I gotta go. Hold on. That was freaking crazy. It was like I awoke Pazuzu or something. Like a yellow jacket just came down from like the sky onto my desk. And I think it was being trapped by a spider, stuck in a spider web inside the house in December.
That's like, had it been there for a long period of time, do you think?
I
And
have
just finally
no
wriggled free?
idea.
How else would it
No
be still be
idea.
alive?
I have no clue.
All right, well, that's our number 11 story of 2024.
That was
Anyways, back to Pete Carroll. Like, obviously, the Kalen DeBoer thing was surprising. There seemed to be some momentum towards it for a few days leading up to it. The Pete Carroll firing could not possibly have come more out of nowhere. Like, if you listen back to our podcast, there is no concept that there is any chance that Pete Carroll was going to get fired. And a year later, I'm still kind of surprised by it, but I do think the Seahawks logic made sense. We'll talk more about Mike McDonald, I think, in his first season when we recap the Seahawks season with Ben Baldwin coming soon, which he still hasn't agreed to. But
we
we're
haven't
still
asked
counting on
him.
it. Yeah. But I like it made sense, but it still was shocking, and it's still the end of, as you said, the most successful era in Seahawks history, and one that I think we will always have very, very fond memories for, and even probably more so as we get farther away from it. Our number one sports story of 2024. Again, it happened within the very first 24 hours of 2024, and that was UW football reaching the college football playoff final, beating Texas in the Sugar Bowl in the CFP semifinal before losing to Michigan in the national championship in Houston, in a game that, I mean, we've never seen before in Husky history, because when they have won or shared national championships, it was in a much different system. And look, let's be clear, it's very hard to get there. We may never see it again in our lifetimes. It was an incredible moment, even though it went down as a loss in the final. So I think this had to be our number one sports story of 2024, despite the magnitude of everything else that happened.
How freaking awesome was this, by the way?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, I don't know what our number one sports story was of. I guess it was the move to the Big Ten, but of 2023.
You're saying even of Seattle sports stories, it's a remarkable story.
It was. I guess what I'm saying is it was the culmination of so many things. It was the winning this game, but it was also beating Oregon twice to do it. Beating Oregon in the.
I mean, our top story of 2023 was UW completes undefeated regular season.
Yeah. So.
So.
Yeah, well, I guess we didn't know at the time.
The Big Ten move was number 3.
Okay. But the cool thing about it was it wasn't TCU winning to go to the national championship game. It wasn't something that was like this team, I guess, belonged here, but we begrudgingly had them. This was a team that was an elite team. They weren't quite as good as Michigan, probably, but it was an elite UW football team. It was the best UW football team of all time, probably, if we're being honest with ourselves. And
I don't know. Are we accounting for era? I do think the 1991 team was better relative to 1991 teams than the 2023 team was relative to 2023 teams. I mean, the Huskies, I mentioned that FPI about Alabama being better this year than they were in 2023 in terms of FPI efficiency. I mean, the Huskies on that ranking ended up 9th, to be clear.
In 2023 FPI?
Yeah.
Wow. DeBoer washed. That's honestly what I keep telling people, though. The team wasn't actually as good as you think. But
I mean, you did say on a recent podcast you thought the 2022 team was low-key better.
Oh, definitely better. But to have beaten Texas in that game, in that magnitude, to have won that game overall, right? To have withstood the comeback that they had, it was just.
And to do it against Sark, a former UW coach.
It was awesome. It was really unlike anything we've seen as Husky football fans. And we talked about this tons of the time. But the one thing that his predecessors couldn't do, basically since Don James era, was win the big game like that and, make it happen. Chris Peterson did it at Boise, but he was a phenomenal coach in Seattle who never really won that big game. and the Huskies did it against Texas. It's just funny having this be the number one sports story of 2024 because basically all of the rest of 2024 was affected by it, but any of the positives that would have come from it happening didn't really happen.
Well,
And
Michael Penix Jr. getting drafted in the top 10 was a positive that came from it.
there were
430 yards in this game.
And really was one of his better games of the season as well.
Yeah.
But it was just it's hard not to have sports story number 3 and number 1 not be linked to each other, I guess. In a similar way, I think, last year you talked about the Big Ten transition and the perfect season. Like all of these things are interconnected, and sports story number 1 was incredible. Sports story number 3 was the direct result probably of sports story number 1. And it really affected the rest of the program for the entire year after that. So we can litigate whether we're in a better place or not right now, but it's almost hard to be like the greatest sports story of 2024 happened on day 1 of the year and then was downhill from then, because ultimately I look at 2024, it's a 2023. It was a 2023 moment that happened in calendar 2024. And I look at 2024 as ultimately overall, and if we could talk about coaching changes in general now, as a transitional year in Seattle sports and really a bad year in Seattle sports. There's almost no positives to take. And I think the thing that we may look back on this season as kind of salad days of a lot of these organizations, programs, etc. We might look at 2024 as the year it all started for the Huskies, Husky football, Husky basketball, the Seahawks, teams like that. Even the Storm, you might be able to trace back, right? They got the draft pick. They got the draft pick that led to who? And I think that's how you have to look at 2024 is none of the teams were awful. It's not like there was abject, terrible play on the field. They all were good to fine.
I suppose the Kraken were probably the worst team.
And I guess the Sounders, made it pretty far in the playoffs. But there were so many teams that played pretty well. And I think every team ended. We went through a pretty solid era in Seattle sports. And every team kind of ended at the same time. That era ended at the same time and was going through a transitional period. When you look at all these teams, they were all having a transitional year in 2024. I think the Mariners probably record-wise may have met expectations, but making the playoffs wise didn't meet expectations. Maybe they a little bit underperformed. Most of the teams didn't really underperform in 2024. The expectations were just kind of low. And that's what happens when you have coaching transitions. You have a coaching transition for 2 reasons. The reason is somebody was so good that they leave, or somebody was bad enough that they were fired. And that usually means that the team, the organization around them are not in an amazing place. So
but they were in a better position, I think, than usually that happens. Like with the exception of the Kraken, these teams weren't rebuilding. The Seahawks and Mariners aren't rebuilding because they made coaching changes. I think the Seahawks are, as you said, in a transitional period, and it's still very much tied to who their quarterback is going to be, both next season and longer beyond that. But
they're having transitioning seasons.
A lot of transitioning seasons, I suppose. They're still in a transition from Russell Wilson, some might say. But the Mariners are going into 2025 with equally high expectations. That's obviously not going to change.
Every single team is going into 2025 with an expectation to make the playoff of some kind. I think every single team.
I don't know that that's a fair expectation for the Seahawks, in as much as the division is going to be so much better next year, but I don't think it's a ridiculous. In the Kraken, that's not going to be the expectation. So we'll address that later. But yeah, I don't feel bad about the direction of any of the programs. I do think the big takeaway here is all these teams that fired their coaches, pretty much in the same spot they were beforehand. The Mariners did have a much better record under Scott's service. I don't think that necessarily, or under Dan Wilson, I don't think that necessarily meant anything. Other people might be more optimistic about it, but
the Mariners should make the playoffs though next
year. They should. I agree, but they might be equally good and make the playoffs. The Astros just might be worse. The Seahawks fired Pete Carroll and ended up pretty much the same team, even though I think it was the way they got there was better long term. The Kraken have gotten no better with their coaching change. The UW men's basketball still has many of the same issues. coaches really aren't as important as we want to give them credit for. It's more about the players. I know in some of these in the college level, the coaches help pick the players, so that is meaningful. But you know, these coaching changes did not dramatically change or alter the trajectories of these franchises or programs.
Okay.
Do you have anything else to say about coaching changes?
No, I
Besides that?
agree. I agree.
All right, should we pick our Seattle sports figure of the year?
We do this first before we look at bold predictions.
We do this first before we look at bold predictions. Is a recap. We've been doing this since 2013. That year, I took Pete Carroll. You took Russell Wilson. The next year, I took Marshawn Lynch, and you took Richard Sherman. In 2015, I then took Russell Wilson, and you took Michael Bennett. In 2016, we both had Chris Peterson as UW went to the college football playoff for the first time. 2017, I had Tim Leiweke. You had Clint Dempsey. 2018, we both had Sue Bird in the wake of the Storm Championship. 2019, I had Brian Schmetzer. You had Megan Rapinoe. 2020, we both took Brianna Stewart as the Storm won a second championship in this era. 2021, I chose the curse. And you chose the fan, 75%, and 25% Alex Rodriguez.
There we go.
We're getting into the concept era. Number 2022.
The podcast went conceptual in that year.
I chose the Seattle Mariners. You chose Julio Rodriguez. In
The Seattle Mariners. God, I still am mad about that one.
We both, I mean, you're not alone. We both agreed on Michael Penix Jr. So that leaves us 2024. Who is your Seattle sports figure?
Why do I have to go first?
Oh, you want me to go first? You've been guessing at this for a long time. Do you have a final guess?
I think you're. So at first I was like, is he going to say one of the Storm players?
No.
I don't feel like anybody did well enough. I guess you're going to say Kalen DeBoer.
I think it's an obvious choice to go. I mean, based on what I just said, that was the highlight. Because it's not the Seattle sports hero of 2024. Like his decision to leave
wasn't a figure in Seattle sports for like 358 days of 2024.
I mean, it was more than that. Or no, I guess it was less than that. But he loomed over everything that happened in Husky football the remainder of the year. And actually loomed over the Seahawks too. Because I don't know if you're aware of this. His former offensive coordinator happens to be the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks at the moment.
It's so funny how we view things because okay. So you're going Kalen DeBoer.
I am, yes.
I'm not saying that I'm not going Kalen DeBoer, I guess.
You haven't chosen yet? You're doing it on the fly?
Literally, it did not cross my mind for Kalen DeBoer. Because, again, he won a game on the first day of 2024 and then left us and took many of the players from Seattle. I understand what you're saying, that it's not like the greatest Seattle sports person. It's the person who has the most magnitude. I understand that, and I can agree with that, I suppose.
I wasn't pro curse. Pro Jermaine curse, but not the curse.
2024, I felt like had to be conceptual.
Oh no.
So I'm gonna give a person, I guess, but to me, the number one thing that I was just like, what do I keep coming back to in 2024? And every single time I thought about 2024, I just thought about lamenting moments that happened, wishing something hadn't happened.
So you're saying this was my whole the Chinese farmer parable?
What?
You don't know the parable? We talked about this parable.
You've gone through this before, right?
Where the person says, "What good fortune, perhaps? What terrible luck, perhaps." It's basically equivalent to your weight, I suppose. Although you're strictly speaking about waiting from a hating standpoint.
Yes.
In this case, it also can be positive.
The hater is always right or needs to be patient. Nobody's ever said that before. Coin Tristan. I gotta give the Pelletcast all credit for that one. But there were so many moments when I thought about Husky football. It was like beating Texas was great, but the number one thing that I remember from the 2023 into 2024 Husky football season, the moment that loomed the largest was the Huskies hit a deep pass against Michigan with a chance to come back in the game. And then they called a fucking hold, a pretty phantom hold. And I'm just like, if that hadn't happened, if they hadn't thrown that flag for the hold, the game looks different. If the Mariners, they're going through the season, they're 10 games above 500 at one point. We haven't talked about that. That was the thing that happened in 2024. They were 10 games over 500. It was almost a lock that they were in the playoffs. And then it's just like, if they hadn't lost, and I know it looked better in hindsight because they got good, but it's just like, they hadn't lost 5 of 6 to the Tigers, or they hadn't lost those games to the Angels. You're just like, all of these games, right? Just like these little moments that happened that affected everything else negatively. For the Seahawks, I'm thinking about the season. I'm just like, if JSN catches that pass against the Giants, they probably score a touchdown. They don't have to kick as long as a field goal. Or if they call a flag on that play, on the play where the center gets held down on the field goal attempt, the Seahawks are in the playoffs, or at least playing for the playoffs this weekend. And it's because of that you could just point back to this moment all the way down to even this weekend where it's like, if the Cardinals had just run the ball, right? We don't know that they score a touchdown, but it's like, just run the ball. And right now, we're talking about the Seahawks with a chance to make the playoffs next weekend. You know, even the freaking Falcons game, it's just like all these little moments where it's like, that just hadn't gone different. Same with Kalen DeBoer. And it's like, honestly, if Nick Saban Nick Saban had stuck around for one more year, or even if Dan Lanning is like, fuck this, I'll take that job. You know, like Dan Lanning was the option before Kalen DeBoer. There was a moment, literally the swinging doors moment for these two rivals, where
the expression
one was
is sliding doors, not swinging doors.
Sliding doors moment for these two programs, where one of them was going to have their coach taken, almost certainly, right? And it's either
it could
them
have
or
been
us.
Sark.
And I mean, Sark was building something pretty nice at that point. But yes, it could have been Sark. It could have been somebody else.
I don't know if you're aware that Stan Lanning was building something pretty nice at that point too.
We'll see.
They're undefeated in the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. Like,
hey,
they could lose, but it's not like it's going to be a bad year for Oregon. Okay.
We're in wait time period right now.
Okay, well,
because all you have to do is wait. The hater's always right, or needs to wait a second. But that was it. It was just lamenting these moments. That's what I thought about all year. And I understand this universal sports thing, but it just felt like for Seattle sports for the entire season, whenever you wanted something to go right or thought something might go right, that's the exact moment that it went wrong in Seattle sports. So,
well, you're saying the sports star of the year was Don't Look Now?
Not don't look now, but just lamenting these small moments. So if I had to go, this is the funny part about how you view things and how I view things, is I was thinking about all the people where I was like, who I guess loomed the largest, and really the people that we talked about were all people that I feel like probably should be getting this next year, the year after, the year after that. I was like, JSN had a monster year, right? JSN had one of the biggest breakouts in Seattle sports in the last year, right?
Yeah.
I think Cal Raleigh, they didn't make the playoffs, but the big dumper really solidified himself as kind of a Seattle legend this season.
1 year ago on this very podcast, you scoffed at my having picked Cal Raleigh, said that my bonus bold prediction was Cal Raleigh as an all-star.
I scoffed at that because I
didn't think he was nearly good enough. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. See, that's the kind of year. Thought about Cal Raleigh. Mike McDonald, right? I'm like, Mike McDonald, this isn't Mike McDonald's year yet.
Absolutely.
It'll happen. And the one that I guess if I had to pick and settle on somebody, to me, it's Jedd Fisch, of all people. Because again, you're viewing things as the person who loomed over it. And to me, I'm looking at the transition, what came next, what he is building. Because Jedd Fisch came into a UW program that it wasn't a laughing stock, but there was a little bit of the sense of like, everybody's leaving.
No,
right?
I mean,
and you know what?
The
he
degree
brought
of paranoia.
some of those motherfuckers back home.
Yeah.
This transfer portal. Jedd Fisch solidified things. He went out, he got a bunch of NFL caliber coaches. He brought in Steve Belichick for a year. He got Damon Williams to transfer, Jonah Coleman to transfer. A lot of the program that we're talking about that we're excited about for the future, these are Jedd's players in a way that Kalen DeBoer never. Kalen DeBoer had one player, basically.
I don't know that would go that far.
You can thank Chris Peterson for those Kalen DeBoer teams. You cannot thank Kalen DeBoer for these Jedd Fisch teams.
I mean, we also saw Jimmy Lake coach some of those teams.
And Jimmy Lake as well.
It didn't go super great.
Nobody's saying that Jimmy Lake was a good coach, but like Jimmy Lake recruited some of those players and Chris Peterson recruited some of those players. So
Yeah, I would say it's much more, and this is also a function of college football and how much turnover there is now compared to then. It is much more Jed Fish's program immediately than it was Kalen DeBoer's program immediately. I think that is a fair way to put it, and that DeBoer's success was to a degree sort of a continuation of the Chris Peterson era. So I suppose so. I just is with. I hope that Jed Fish will be my pick in a future year. I'll put it that way.
Me too.
Because it won't be for a 6-6 season that ended in the Sun Bowl with that amazing win the Huskies got, or their that disappointing loss they suffered to Louisville. All right, should we get into the bold predictions, starting with reviewing our 2024?
Yes, I just think Jed has done an admirable job in pretty difficult circumstances.
All right, your first bold prediction. I'm giving you this one.
Oh, we're doing the correct ones first?
No, this is just the order you gave him. In the first game day the Huskies hosted the Big Ten versus undefeated Michigan, UW wins a CFP championship rematch and fans storm the field before we host an emergency pod, quote, for the ages, and claim that the win is better than winning the title. So do you care to air your grievances now?
My grievances are the whole time I'm watching this game and I'm just like, we should be doing an emergency pod where I can say, because I was thinking about this when we won this. There's parts that I didn't have right of that.
Neither team was undefeated. I know you hadn't checked Michigan's schedule and seen that they were playing at Texas, apparently.
They were at home against Texas.
Oh, they were home? Okay.
Didn't change anything. They got their ass kicked, but they were at home. And they don't call them bold predictions because they're not bold, but
they don't call them bold predictions because there's not 8 clauses in them.
Oh, just wait. They
do not host College Game Day, alas.
Yeah, many of those things. But the most important piece was that I was deprived by you of calling it a greater win. I thought I said something along the lines of, this is the real national championship.
I mean, the thing is, by the time the game actually happened, well, it was in fact a thrilling victory, and fans, including yourself and Baby Fantasy Genius, did in fact storm the field, and the famous cousin Katie, because I was not there to stop it.
Stop it. You would have stopped all 70,000 of us.
It was pretty evident that Michigan was not a very good team by the time this game concluded. Like, it was a great win and all, but it was like, this is not the national championship Michigan team.
It was very therapeutic. Look, I know you don't understand what it was like not being there, but it was very therapeutic to have beaten Michigan in that game. How about that?
I don't dispute that.
Go ahead.
Your next bold prediction.
All winners.
Rodgers is invited to the Heisman ceremony, with Kalen DeBoer earning a reputation as the new Lincoln Riley who can take any transfer quarterback and turn them into a Heisman contender. So a few things happened along the way there. But Will Rogers was not, alas, invited to the Heisman ceremony. Your bonus bold prediction as part of this was that another transfer quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, would not start every game for Oregon. And again, technically, that could still come true. I don't like your odds.
That's so funny.
Seems likely that if he was injured or replaced, it would probably be a case where the Ducks would lose. All right, number 3.
Wait, just really quick on that one, though. I'm just giving that an incomplete because we didn't know.
Okay, fair enough. Number 3, you said that your 2024 Seahawks quarterback would be Geno Smith.
There we go.
To which I asked, does that count as a bold prediction? I mean, a lot of people did not think that, and I, in fact, had a different Geno Smith-related bold prediction. So you got that one officially.
That's it. I'm going to give that as a mild.
Next up, the Mariners will win the AL West behind Julio Rodriguez's breakout season. That did not happen. And as a bonus, that Julio will finish in the top 5 in MVP voting, which, number one, you did not realize until I informed you on the air last year that he had finished 4th in MVP voting during 2023. He did not obviously receive any votes this year after his injury-marred season. Cal Raleigh was the only Mariners player to receive votes. All right, next, we alluded to this earlier. Mike Hopkins is signing an extension for precisely 4 more seasons. That one I also said was not bold enough.
Yeah. You said it wasn't bold enough.
Coming off the thrilling win over Gonzaga. We didn't know that Frank Kepnang was not going to play at all in calendar 2024, the
You should just
2024 part of the 2023.
assume every year on the year in review podcast that Frank Kepnang's not going to play again.
No. All right, next up. Italy defeats England on July 6th in the Euro quarterfinals en route to facing host Germany in the finals. Alas, you had correctly looked at the bracket. Italy lost 2-0 to Switzerland in the round of 16. England went on to beat them 5-3 on penalties in that July 6th matchup. Germany lost to Spain in the quarterfinals, and Spain went on to beat England
Why do I
2-1.
not even remember these matches?
Me neither. I remember nothing of the Euro. It has just completely been wiped out of my brain, presumably because of the fact that Italy did not do well.
You said that, and I was like, that happened this year.
Me too. All I remember is Italy's Nations League first place finish, including the draw that I attended against Belgium
That's
in Rome.
so funny. That's actually incredible.
All right, your last bold prediction is you went 2 of 7. The NBA's return to Seattle is announced. I also wasn't super sure that was bold. I still think it's likely to happen at some point, but the timing remains uncertain. All right, my 2024 bold predictions. Number 1, as we've been talking about, Austin Mack will start more games than Will Rogers for the Huskies. Obviously not true, and not as positive as I remember, because Devon Williams Jr. did not have a realistic chance to start more games. But Will Rogers getting benched at the end of the season, I feel like in the battle of the bold predictions, I definitely came closer. My bold prediction that was wrong, where
we kind of ended up right in the middle. Like, Will Rogers wasn't bad necessarily until the very, very end. Things kind of fell off there. But Will Rogers was probably slightly better than we thought. And especially without Kalen DeBoer. Like, part of my bold prediction was a Kalen DeBoer bold prediction as well.
But you believe in Jedd Fisch's offense too. I mean, I think Will Rogers at home.
I mean, if we were doing an Arizona podcast, we would have definitely boldly predicted Noah Fifita on the Heisman conversation. So
Will Rogers at home was a lot better than I expected. Will Rogers on the road was a lot worse than I expected.
Well, and also at home against USC.
Yes, eventually at home too. All right, my Geno Smith related bold prediction was that the Seahawks would trade him. A path I still think is conceivably possible in the 2025 offseason, but obviously did not come back to pass. This is a case where the Seahawks, we were not nearly bold enough. I predicted that the Seahawks would bring back Sean Desai as defensive coordinator to replace Clint Hurt because Clint Hurt would take the fall for the Seahawks season. Although we also talked about the Seahawks defense getting exposed in the playoffs in that pod, so I guess we missed some things there.
We thought that they were going to be playing in the playoffs.
I have to go back and look where we were in the schedule.
Thing. I love looking back on us a year ago because I don't even recall that being a thing that was within the realm of possibilities.
So they were 8-7 after winning at Tennessee with 2 home games left against Pittsburgh and Arizona. And I think had they won both of those games, they would have made the playoffs.
And they lost to Pittsburgh, and then the Arizona game didn't matter.
Correct. Yes, at 10-7, they would have made the playoffs because Green Bay made it as the last wild card at 9-8.
Pittsburgh was on Christmas Eve.
They
ran all over us, right? It was like the first time that Najee Harris. I don't think I went to this game. I was not at that game for some reason.
The Tennessee game was on Christmas Eve. The Pittsburgh game was on New Year's Eve.
I see. Yeah, I didn't go to it because it was Miss Fantasy Genius's birthday, and then Najee Harris was the first ever time that he played well.
All right, next up, after hitting 32 home runs, Julio Rodriguez will join Jay Buhner, Nelson Cruz, Ken Griffey Jr., and Alex Rodriguez as the 5th player in franchise history to hit at least 40 home runs in a season. Instead, he hit a career low 20. So he was precisely half of what I said.
We believed in you, Julio.
I mean, I still believe in Julio, but I did not make any Julio-related bold predictions. Seattle native and Garfield alum Jalen Stewart transfers to UW from UConn. Alas, the son of Lodrick Stewart is still at UConn after winning a national title, now among their top bench players this season.
I like it, though. I like the bold prediction.
You often say that about my bold predictions. I predicted next that UW Women's Hoops would win an NCAA tournament game in their first appearance since 2017. Things kind of went south after the new year for UW Women's Hoops. So they did not really make it or really come particularly close to making the NCAA tournament. All right, my one correct one from last year. The Storm will sign Skylar Diggins Smith as an unrestricted free agent.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty logical. She was a point guard. They desperately needed a point guard. I, I mean, if I'd gotten NECA too, that would have been pretty bold.
All right.
All right, then lastly, I had that Dave Tippett, the longtime NHL head coach who served as a coaching consult or was a coaching consultant for the Kraken after serving as a senior advisor during the expansion phase, would replace Dave Hackstall behind the bench. At that point, I didn't really know about Dan Bilesma and what he was doing in that Coachella Valley. I was woefully
Awesome
underinformed.
things he'd achieved in Coachella Valley.
My bonus bold prediction, also wrong, was that Seattle's Climate Pledge Arena would be announced as the host of the 2025 NHL All-Star Game. And instead, they decided not to do an All-Star Game and are hosting the Four Nations Face-Off International Tournament in both Boston and Montreal.
There you go. They chose not to race.
Yes. All right. 2 are bold predictions for 2025.
Should we do this by team? Let me see how many. I have.
That's generally how we do it. Let's start with the Seahawks.
I have a lot on the teams that. Let's see, a lot of Seahawks. I have
Okay.
Seahawks, Huskies, Sounders, and Mariners. I kind of just did all the bold predictions in one long bold prediction for some of them. And then I've got a bunch of bonus ones. Oh, just wait.
Okay. Let's start with the Seahawks.
Okay. You want me to go first?
Yeah.
The Seahawks draft Jackson Dart in the 3rd round of the NFL draft, and he starts a game in 2025 season looking bad, but mildly promising.
I think you said that they were not going to be subjective.
Oh,
This
just
year.
wait. There's some that are very specific.
Jackson Dart said Ole Miss.
Oh my God. Keep up.
I have no idea.
He's
know
a
that I-
football player.
you, you know I do not pay attention to college football outside of the Huskies. Where does he play?
Yes. Yes, he is at Ole Miss.
Okay, well, you could a simple yes would have sufficed.
No, it wouldn't have. Only
Oh.
condescending was the right answer there.
Let's go ahead and hashtag Pelton quotes. How is he in QBR?
I think he's the type of quarterback that Mike McDonald likes. He's like a big armed quarterback. I think that's the type of offense that they want to run. I could see him as being like mildly Darnold.
Oh, number 4 in QBR. Okay, all right, let's do it. Does he have eligibility left though?
No, he's going to the NFL.
Okay, sweet. I'm in.
I think he's ranked Mel Kiper like 7th, but he's probably going to be a day 2, day 3 pick. Who knows? I mean, quarterbacks may move up in the draft, but he's not in kind of the highest tier. I don't see them being a Jalen Milroe team, and I think that the Seahawks will draft a quarterback. And I don't even know if I want them to draft Shadur or Cam Ward either, but neither of them are probably going to be there.
A bold prediction in and of itself, considering how few quarterbacks the Seahawks have drafted. They have not drafted a quarterback that high since David Green, I believe we determined.
Yep.
All right, my first Seahawks
Well,
bold
Russell
prediction.
Wilson.
Oh, yeah, other than Russell Wilson, yes. The Seahawks will hire Mike Kafka as offensive coordinator.
Wow. I have come around to team. I think they're keeping Ryan Grubb.
After they won 6-3, that was the game you thought saved his job?
I don't know if he saved his job, but I for some reason I have a sneaking feeling that I'd be fine with Kafka, I think, but I think they're going to give Ryan Grubb one more year.
I mean, I don't know that I have any particular position on Ryan Grubb's future. It's a bold prediction. And so you'll recall that last year they interviewed Kafka twice for their head coaching job,
Yep.
but were blocked by the Giants from interviewing him for their offensive coordinator job. I considered that Brian Dable might be the hire. It seems like the scuttle is he probably is not going to get let go after this season, but you would think they have to have some pretty substantial coordinator change after a 3-13 season that has gone the way that it has. And so I think Kafka, they might just want to get out of his contract, which is one of the largest for offensive coordinators in the NFL, and might be happy to let him go somewhere else that wanted him. And look, if anyone has bedeviled Mike McDonald this season, it was the New York Football Giants.
It's like the Giants.
Because it's funny, I originally wanted to do a Bills related OC, but the Bills destroy everyone, and it's really just about Josh Allen. But Kafka, who also has the Bills ties, clearly Mike McDonald could not figure him out. All right, your
Or
next Seahawks one.
December 21st, 2025. On a game flecked out of Sunday Night Football, they get revenge against the Minnesota Vikings and starting quarterback J.J. McCarthy, putting them in position to clinch a playoff spot with one win in the final 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, so that implies that the Vikings will lose on Sunday to the Detroit
Yes.
Lions, which is necessary for them to face off next season as the second place finishers in their respective division. Are you assuming that Sam Darnold is not going to be back with the Vikings, or that JJ McCarthy is going to start instead of him?
We'll see. We don't know.
It's just
It would be
there's so many
a
moving
very
parts.
interesting decision. I mean, again, we saw this with literally the Vikings ex quarterback right now that they drafted a quarterback, somebody else gave him a big deal, and then the rookie pushed him out. So I think it is very difficult to draft JJ McCarthy where you drafted JJ McCarthy and not play JJ McCarthy.
Plausibly true.
So but also they love putting these types of games in this position. It feels like there's one of these types of games that happens on that kind of Sunday right around Christmas pretty much every year with another big NFC opponent.
Did you look up what date the Sunday is next year?
Absolutely, I did.
Okay, well, look at
No, I
you
didn't.
and your research.
I've got
just
all
would've-
sorts of specific dates.
You love a specific date. All right, my other Seahawks related bold prediction. Jackson Smith and Jigba will break DK Metcalf's record for Seahawks single season receiving yards of 1,303. He's currently 13th all time with 1,121 heading into the final game. Has a chance to get into the top 5 with a big week 18 of over 100 yards. And since week 8 has been on a 1,500 yard pace.
Totally agree. Great bold prediction.
Thank you.
I guess this is the last Seahawks related one. The 49ers, with their fourth place schedule, win the NFC West easily, cruising to the second seed.
That's not even bold. I guess there may be more clauses here.
The Seahawks again play them in the playoffs, losing on a final pick by Geno in his last game in Seattle.
Okay. Seems plausible. I mean, yeah, we are all going to take the 49ers over. I've never been as confident of anything.
But also Vegas is aware that it's going to be a high over.
Still probably not high enough.
For a team bouncing back from a fourth place schedule, it's probably going to be like 10.5 or something like that. 11.5 maybe.
Do you want to do UW football?
Sure.
All right, I only have one of them. So should I start this, or do you have multiple?
I have I have a sort of a bonus one that's kind of Seahawks, kind of UW football.
All right. Well, my UW bold prediction: Damon Williams Jr. becomes the fourth UW quarterback in the modern era to run for at least 500 yards in a season, joining Dennis Fitzpatrick in 1974, Jake Locker in 2007, and Marcus Tuiasosopo in 1999. He had 234 rushing yards this season.
I actually considered a Damon Williams Jr. running bold prediction. I actually have many UW ones. I don't know what I'm taking. Okay. Both with 2 losses. UW Oregon on November 29th is a de facto play-in game for the college football playoff. We all panic that Jed will leave for another job, but he accepts extra years on his current deal.
I like that.
More UW football?
Sure. I mean,
Damon Williams is rumored to have an NIL agreement for $3 million plus for the upcoming 2026 season.
At UW or anywhere?
At UW. But
Okay.
hopefully, I don't know. Maybe it'll be somewhere else. But
What if they don't
specify.
report the size of his NIL deal?
That's why it's not like officially reporting, right? It's just a rumor. We don't know
Okay.
the exact number, but 3 million plus is the number.
I suppose 2 losses is plausible for the Huskies going into the Oregon game. That's within the realm of possibility.
I mean, you can look at the 2 games and say it's probably these 2, but one of the games appears later in a different bold prediction.
That's Ohio State and Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, continue your Husky-related bold predictions.
Michael Penix Jr.'s Atlanta Falcons are in position for the number 1 seed in the NFC by this
Wow.
time next year, including a week 1 victory against the Seahawks.
Ah. You're going to fly Michael Penix Jr. out here for week 1. Or would that be there?
It's in Atlanta.
Okay, returning to the ATL. They built the dome for him, finally. Anything else on UW football?
Nope.
Are UW men's basketball?
I have nothing on UW men's basketball.
All right, let's do the Mariners then.
You go first.
The Mariners will sign a free agent. No, that's not actually.
I actually considered the same thing. So funny.
It's a good joke. It's a good bet.
The Mariners will transact.
The Mariners will steal 190 bases for the first time in franchise history, blowing away the team record of 174 set in both 1987 and 2001. They were on a 200 steal pace after Dan Wilson replaced Scott Service as manager.
Yes.
3 teams stole more than 200 bases last year, all of them in the National League. Apparently, there were weaker armed catchers in the NL.
They do. I actually think what's going to happen is they're going to steal too many bases.
And then like
And-
teams are going to start paying so much attention to
Yeah,
it.
Dan Wilson's going to throttle it way back. I'm going to boldly predict that your bold prediction's wrong.
I mean, of course it's going to be wrong. That's why it's a bold prediction.
Okay. Do you have any more Mariners?
No, that's it.
The Mariners defeat 5 seed Cleveland Guardians in 5 games behind a dominant Game 5 effort from Logan Gilbert and 2 wins in the series from Cy Young winner George Kirby for their first series win since 2001. They then fall 4-1 to the Yankees, who lose a second consecutive World Series.
They're losing to the Yankees in the ALCS.
Yes.
Well, if they make the playoffs, they have to play the Yankees at some point. We know that to be the case. So fair enough.
So that's like 3 bold predictions in there.
That's true. I considered a Cy Young related one.
Oh, George Kirby's winning. Come on.
The other one I
Is he the
considered
one though? I think Kirby's the one.
probably. I mean, I think he's the best of the
He's-
starters.
He's the number 1 starter next year. I was going through the rotation and just being like, all right, 5-game series against the Guardians. Or no, would that be a 7-game series? Was that 5? That'd be 5.
No, it'd
right?
be the LDS. Yes.
It's still 5 games, right?
Yes.
So game 1 is Kirby. Game 2 is Gilbert. So they win game 1. That's Kirby. Game 2, they lose Gilbert. Game 3 is Wu/Miller because Luis Castillo's traded in this scenario. So the
A bold prediction in and of itself. The
They're-
one
they're
I
down to-
considered.
I mean, I was sort of, I feel like the most rumored trade target being traded is not.
But if they traded him mid-season, I think that would be more bold than them trading him during the offseason. I also considered Emerson Hancock number of starts as a bold prediction.
Game so Wu/Miller is game 3. Although I mean Brian Wu's the best of all these pitchers, of course. We all know that. Game 4, Kirby comes back to start game 4, wins that one. Gilbert pitches in game 5. With probably one of whoever, Wu/Miller/Hancock is available out of the bullpen. Think about this team in the playoffs.
I'm
Transact,
excited.
Jerry.
All right. Sounders?
I have 1 Sounders.
The Sounders will win a match during the FIFA Club World Cup when they host the group stages. Probably has to be Botafogo in the opener because I don't know that I like their chances against Atletico Madrid or PSG, but I think it's plausible they could win a match.
It really is just dependent on how much people care about this or like the teams.
I did go back and look at it, and the European teams generally tend to do pretty well.
Yeah, no shit. The good teams do pretty well at it. The bad teams don't do as well.
But I mean, I thought it might be the case where it's like it's like a bowl game where like the big teams don't care at all, so the little teams win all the time, and that's not really the case.
Remember when we were kids, my favorite segment on TV was headlines on Jay Leno on Monday nights.
Uh-huh.
That's your version. Study. Good teams do well in tournament. Brian Schmetzer is finally caught up on the wave of coach firings and let go at the end of another strong but uneventful Sounders season.
Oh, I very much hope not. He just signed an extension too, so I'd be a little surprised by that one. But I guess that's why it's a bold prediction.
Okay, do your. I think all the rest of mine are
Non-sports.
non-sports or sports-ish.
Okay, obviously I went through.
I cooked on one of these. I'm just gonna say I really cooked on one of these.
I went through the entire rundown and so forth. Had a tougher time on some of these than others. Danny Sprinkle will get his first Big Ten win on January 15th when the Huskies upset 2024 national runner-up Purdue.
Really?
There's your version of a bold
No, I
prediction.
like it. I love that.
I should have added more detail. Great Osibor scores 20 points. Christian King makes a three-pointer off the bench. Wilhelm Breitenbach is in foul trouble, but the Huskies still get the upset. All right, next up. Building on a top 10 recruiting class highlighted by five-star Spokane forward Bryn McGahee, the UW women will sign the highest-rated recruit in program history, Tacoma center Olivia Edwards, who's rated in the top 5
Really?
nationally in 2026.
Wow.
I'm sure she'll probably go to South Carolina, but you know, it's fun to dream. All right, the Kraken will promote assistant GM Alexandra Mandrycky to become the first female GM in NHL history after letting Ron Francis go at season's end. All right, and lastly, after trading Jewel Lloyd, the Storm will win their first playoff series since 2022.
I'm with it.
Yeah. So there you go.
Okay.
We have boldly predicted.
I wanted
Oh,
to
the-
read a bold. I've got more.
Yeah,
Do not.
We have sports boldly predicted. Sorry.
So no, but some of my sports. I did want to read this one from a friend who was inspired by my very specific bold predictions.
Unnecessarily specific, let's say.
But this is from her. Classical music becomes the newest insufferable cool thing. Natural wines start getting names like Schubert Divertissement a la Hangros. I can't even read it. Around the world, coffee shops with subway tiles and Edison bulbs replace indie music and Charlie with Haydn's symphonies. Dudes try to one-up you with facts about Beethoven.
I like it. Seems unlikely it would happen that quickly.
This was another one where I was like, this is definitely new review-based social media platforms launch promising the letterboxed of music,
Okay.
books, performance, etc. Google acquires many, including Letterboxd, for a crazy amount of money, trying to integrate them into Google reviews, and they all become unusable. The Letterboxd of is like, oh my god. I was just like, damn, that's coming. Okay, you ready for it?
This harkens back to this week's podcast when venture capitalists invented things that already existed.
Donald Trump claims to have saved TikTok early in 2025, and ESPN senior writer Kevin Pelton is asked to voice over a trade grade on the platform in July. He will award both teams a B-. He will not be asked to again.
Okay.
I witnessed this one firsthand. This is not even really a bold prediction, but Raising Cane's opens in Seattle and is so fucking crowded for a year. All of 2025.
Not a bold prediction, even remotely. I mean, you may as well predict that the In and Out in Ridgefield, which is scheduled to open in 2025, is going to have long lines.
Yeah. Okay, you ready?
Sure.
After Timothy Chalamet's appearance, actors will be lining up to show they know ball as the guest picker on College Game Day, culminating with Tom Cruise promoting his new film Judy on October 18th at the Tennessee Bama game in Tuscaloosa. Cruise picks against UW, playing at Michigan, saying, "Give me the kid Underwood and the Wolverines. It'll be strange."
That is undoubtedly the most specific bold prediction in Pelton Cast history.
And of course, finally, this is an annual bold prediction. NBA expansion to Seattle will be announced by the end of 2025. I hope.
Not bold. I'm not expecting it, but not bold. That's what I'm going to tell you. Is Judy scheduled for release October 2nd? It's kind of late for him to be going on game day. Do you think the release date is getting pushed back? Is that part of the
I thought
bold
it was
prediction?
November 2nd.
Also, it's October 22nd, 2026. So
Wait, really?
Some issues here. Some issues.
November 2025. Oh, did that get bumped back?
I don't know. I mean, that's what Wikipedia has, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, it literally 4 days ago got pushed back to
Wow.
October 2nd, 2026.
So, we'll see who UW plays on October that weekend in 2026.
Well, they just changed that.
Outstanding.
The first, I don't even care.
You're keeping it.
I still love the bold prediction. I don't care.
All right. Well,
Tom Cruise on College Game Day.
I agree.
I was like, is Tom Cruise a fan of any team?
Has Tom Cruise ever expressed an outward opinion about anything that could be potentially
I'm
controversial?
telling you, we are gonna see Cruise on game day.
Have we considered Tom Cruise as color analyst for NFL games?
You know, to be a good podcaster, you have to be a good writer. This is a story that Matt Damon told about Jack Nicholson. And anybody could have stopped at Tom Cruise or celebrities on college game day. Anybody could have stopped at Tom Cruise on college game day. Anybody could have stopped at Tom Cruise on college game day promoting the film Judy. Anybody could have stopped at Tom Cruise on college game day promoting the film Judy at Tennessee Bama. But only a good writer gets to Tom Cruise on college game day because of Timothy Chalamet promoting Judy at Tennessee Bama, picking against UW. Maybe it'll be a different film he's promoting.
Oh boy. Well, our bold prediction for my bold prediction for 2025 is more bold predictions and more convoluted bold predictions at that. Thanks everybody for listening in the past year, and we look forward to a 2025 that does not force Tristan to resort to conceptual picks for Sports Figure of the Year.
Literal picks 2025.
Well, on that note,
thanks for listening.
Thanks.
That was an awesome bold prediction, wasn't it?
I mean, it is a great call that everyone wants to get that Chalamet, the bump, I guess, the game day bump.
I changed the knob on a Joy-Con while we were podcasting.
Yeah, it resulted in a lot of awkward silence.
No, it didn't.
It resulted in some awkward silence.
You got to be impressed, though. Come on.
Yes.
I took this thing apart and rebuilt it. That's what I did in 2025. How about you? 4? Whatever. It's 2025 as we're recording this.
All right.
All right. Well, Happy New Year. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
We care.